Tonight, we're going to start out talking about law and order issues centered around Multnomah County and specifically around Portland. But whether you live in Southwest Washington or the greater Portland area, crime and how criminals are dealt with in Oregon's biggest city, well, those do have impacts on you, so stick with us. The crime can kind of spread. The most powerful law enforcement officer in Multnomah County is the district attorney. It's an elected position, and many years in the past, specifically, the race for the job has been a real sleeper. Not this time, though. In May of 2020, Mike Schmidt won by a landslide on his promise of being a progressive prosecutor who would help reshape justice in the county. But he's taken a lot of criticism over the last 3 years, and he now has a challenger from within his own office. And that's our big story tonight. Nathan Vasquez is that challenger. He's a veteran prosecutor who has handled thousands of cases over the last 23 years in the Multnomah County DA's office. I sat down with him last week to learn more about the differences between him and the current guy who holds the office, Mike Schmidt.
Well, first and foremost, we have almost essentially stopped prosecuting misdemeanors in the greatest respect, and it's really resulted in a situation where we've become kind of no rules Portland. So one of the first things would be to rebuild the partnership with law enforcement and to get back to work of, some accountability within our community.
Do you think the partnership's broken then?
Oh, absolutely. Sadly, that's something that we see day in, day out, that partnership is broken. The elected DA broke that early on in his tenure, and it has never been able to come back. It was so bad that I think even a recent example was when the chief of police had to send out a memo to law enforcement officers telling them to stop telling people that the DA won't prosecute cases. It's something that I hear on a daily basis, and I know that with greater collaboration, we can deliver a better public safety to the community.
And I know the actual number of prosecutions are down significantly versus before COVID, but the DA, Mike Schmidt, says, well, that's just because police are bringing me fewer cases.
Well, I think that's one thing that I hear a lot is a lot of excuses from the elected DA, who is really the top elected law enforcement official in the county and maybe even the state. And instead of looking at excuses, what we should be looking at when we look at the numbers is that before COVID, we were prosecuting about a little over 12,000 cases a year. Now, here we are in 2023, and we're prosecuting somewhere in the rate of under 6,000. And this is something that he campaigned on, was to prosecute less. This was something that he set out and told people he was going to do, so no one should be surprised that we're not prosecuting a lot of cases. And when they try to put it to the police officers, really, if you're telling police officers your cases, your efforts are not welcome, then why would they get out of their car and make that arrest?
District Attorney Mike Schmidt announced early in the social justice protest that he would not charge someone arrested by police for refusing to do things like follow officers' orders and get out of the area. Protesters at the time praised the decision, but Vasquez says it created a big break with police.
Oh, I think a really high point in that break certainly was the protest policy when there was two components. The elected DA said very clearly he was not going to prosecute a large number of cases, and we saw that. He also said very clearly to the police officers that the cases in which they were assaulted, those are going to be dealt with an extreme scrutiny, and basically made the officers feel like they were somehow second-class citizens in all of this. And I think that sent a really strong message to police that, quite frankly, to this day, I don't think they've forgotten.
Although, I don't want to totally let you off the hook. You're one of the top prosecutors in the office. Why couldn't you just bring the cases?
Well, I did. I brought the cases that I could. As one of the top prosecutors, I certainly was very involved in the prosecutions that were happening during the protest. I handled some of the largest ones that were in the office, whether it was some of the Antifa individuals causing major damage or firebomb cases. I also prosecuted Proud Boys that were coming into our city and causing problems. So I was doing the cases essentially that I was allowed to under the protest policy, and I was pushing hard on those, both on the far left and on the far right.
And I know that Mike Schmidt has said, well, the policies are now finally starting to gain some traction. There's an auto theft task force, for example, that's starting to cut down on the amount of that. Would you agree?
I would agree that Portland Police did an excellent job of putting together a very data-based approach to taking on car theft. But to somehow attribute that to Mike Schmidt's efforts, I think is a huge stretch. Particularly when you actually, if you go in and look at the numbers in cases in which those car theft cases have been brought to us, the ones that actually make it into the criminal justice system are very, very few. Police are making more arrests, and that's good, but I don't attribute that to Mike Schmidt.
But didn't he set up a task force for that?
That task force and that idea, that's a very old idea that, in fact, in the very beginning of my career was something that we had that went away. And then under his first year of leadership, he proposed a budget to cut actually property crimes prosecutions by almost 40%. And then when the police and public pressure mounted to the point where we were seeing just horrific rates of car theft, that was when he finally decided, almost being dragged along, to join the efforts. What we have seen is a minor reduction in car thefts, but compared to what the historical rates are, we're still way out of balance with that.
Okay, so far we've heard Vasquez thinks the relationship between the DA's office and Portland Police is broken and that he'd fix that. Second, he said the office is currently prosecuting about half the cases now than before Mike Schmidt became the district attorney. He would change that as well. Third, Vasquez says the auto theft task force that you might have heard about is not Schmidt's idea. It was actually an old effort that was brought back from years ago. Vasquez said it's also clear that drug use in Portland is out of control and public drug use needs to be made illegal again. And he said Measure 110 needs to be changed.
And we're seeing that this is not working for our community, and it needs to change. It needs to be reformed. And quite simply, when we decided to decriminalize drugs, what happened is the public safety system just abandoned those everyday addicts on the street. I'm not someone that advocates in any way to return to some war on drugs or to say that we need felonies to prosecute addicts. What I believe is that the public safety system should be working to connect the everyday drug addict, the everyday person that's struggling with that, with treatment. How can we do that? Absolutely, we can find pathways to get people into outpatient and into inpatient facilities.
But do you think that recriminalizing public drug use is a good idea?
I think there's a lot of different options, and I think the public drug use should be criminalized because having individuals out on the street smoking fentanyl, it's not only bad for them, but it's bad for our community. I, as a father, my son goes to Lincoln High School, and when he gets out of school, he has to walk down from school down to the bus mall. And on that path, we have regular conversations, and I'm checking with him through text messages and calls to make sure he gets there safely, because on that path, he has to cross a street multiple times to avoid people smoking fentanyl, and that's unacceptable. As a parent in this community, I expect more from our public safety system, and so should every other parent in this community.
How would you be different than Mike Schmidt?
It's a very basic difference, and it comes down to experience. I've done this job for 23 years. I've had the privilege and honor of working for this community in really so many different capacities, but handling everything from juvenile cases to misdemeanors to child sex abuse cases to gang and gun violence cases, to even handling domestic violence. And really the last part of my career, I've spent a great deal of time working on homicides. And what I bring is 20+ years of experience in collaborating with community partners, with law enforcement, to really deliver public safety. On the other hand, with Mike Schmidt, you get someone who really, when you really dig in and look, he only spent 2 months handling serious cases. He's never done a serious trial. He's never handled a murder case. He's never handled even a robbery or an assault trial. He just hasn't done the things that I think people would expect are very basic for someone that's going to be in charge of a major office like this. And that lack of experience is being reflected right now in our community that we see every day.
Vasquez has thought a lot about how to fix the problems in our criminal justice system. Another thing he wants fixed is how fast people get out of jail after being arrested.
Yeah, so what we're suffering from right now in our community is that because of what's happened with Senate Bill 48, that was a pretrial bail reform that Mike Schmidt pushed hard on. And what has happened is it's created a revolving door at the front end of the courthouse. And so now we're seeing people actually commit more crimes than they even appear in court. So what's happening is this failure to appear rate is skyrocketing, and it's really a situation where we need to get that under control, because these cases aren't getting into the system, and that's important.
Explain that more. I don't understand how they're creating more crimes than getting into court, and how it's not getting into the system.
So what happens right now is, because of this bail reform issue, is that these individuals will commit a crime, and then they will go in, and within 4 hours they're released back to the community before they ever go before a judge. And then we're seeing them commit another crime, and then they'll go back in to the jail. They'll be released in 4 hours before they ever see a judge. And we're even seeing it happen 3-4 times. There's a case out of Gresham that is the one that comes to mind for me, where an individual went into Old Town Gresham and he smashed out windows.
The rock thrower. Yeah.
And then he gets arrested by Gresham police. He's released in 4 hours. He does it a second time, he does it a third time, and a fourth time. Each time he's being arrested. At no time is he appearing in front of a judge. At no time is he being held in custody. Clearly a person who is in some form of crisis, clearly someone who is harming the community greatly. But because of those efforts by the elected DA, we have some really bad results that are harming our community.
Well, and is it really the elected DA, or is it the chief judge who sets those rules?
Well, we have to remember where it started, and that is that, when as the elected DA, you have the opportunity to, really influence policy throughout the state of Oregon. And he pushed hard in Salem to get these changes. And with these changes, then turns to the chief criminal judge, who has to deal with the laws as they've been written. So it's certainly, I think, would be easy for the elected DA to try to point the finger somewhere else, but I think that's disingenuous when you look at the fact that he's the one that pushed for these changes in the law in the first place.
Nathan Vasquez wants to bring back another past program that he said worked well. It's a court system that handles low-level crimes that affect quality of life for the community and gives the offender a chance to make things right.
Well, one of the big things that we're missing right now is what we call the community court system. This is we had this in Multnomah County for years, and it was something that people from around the country came to look and see and study because it was so successful. That went away, and Schmidt has shown little or no interest in bringing that back, and that's something we absolutely need to help build accountability.
And what did it do?
So what happens is, someone that is in our community and commits a misdemeanor crime, and that can be anything from theft all the way up to breaking into cars, even assault. And then what happens is those individuals are brought into the community court, and if they take responsibility for what they did, they are given an opportunity to do community service. And sometimes it's drug treatment or mental health court. So by doing that community service, then they can potentially either have their case dismissed or get a sentence of discharge. Now, what happens is we get that opportunity to intervene and have accountability and compassion.
And that court is not active right now?
Absolutely not. It used to handle about 4,000 cases a year, and now it's just not existent.
Wow, I didn't know that. Did Schmidt shut that down?
I wouldn't say he directly shut it down, but when COVID happened, that court went away, and there has been obviously not enough efforts to bring it back, as it's not here. And I think COVID is one of those things that's people like to point to that as an excuse of why these numbers are down or that numbers are down. But what we've seen around the state is that other communities have been able to rebound and really kind of get back to the business of public safety, whereas here that's just not happening.
Finally, Vasquez is still on the job, still prosecuting cases while he's running against his boss to become district attorney. That must be a little awkward, eh?
Oh, okay. So it's actually not as bad as people think, and that's because Mike Schmidt's not really there that much. He spends a lot of time going to conferences and out of state and kind of around the country, and just really is kind of an absentee boss. So it's really, for me, I am there. This past year I did 4 major trials. 2 homicide cases, and then prosecuted Tiny Tuosi, and I also prosecuted a major sexual assault case. And I mean, I'm there working every day, pushing hard for public safety, and when I rarely see him there, it's fine. I'm a professional, I can deal with that.
I would guess there's some tension.
Perhaps, but these issues are far too important to our community, and I'm here to fight for our community to do better and to see a better outcome for our community by actually getting back to work for public safety.
So there you go, the thoughts from the main challenger for District Attorney in Multnomah County. Now, I know that was a long interview, even by our standards, but I thought it was fascinating, and I thought it was important for you to hear that. I hope you found it fascinating as well. Now, for those of you wondering, yes, we are working with the DA's office to get Mike Schmidt to get a time to sit down. I guess actually I should tell you we're working with the campaign to get a time to sit down with him as he runs for re-election. That sit down will likely happen sometime early next year. Now it's your turn to share your thoughts. What do you think of what you heard tonight from Vasquez? You know the drill. Email us. We're at thestory@kgw.com or call and leave a voicemail 503-226-5090. I look forward to hearing from you.